showed up on time, which is terrific. I want to thank you for coming out this evening, and hopefully it's a really productive evening for all of you. My name is Jim Hayes. I'm superintendent of schools, and I've been obviously greatly involved both with tuition agreement and school facilities. And so what my hope for this evening is not so much me presenting to you as you having the opportunity to ask questions, to learn more about whatever is on your mind relative to solving this junior-senior high problem, and so answer any of your questions and fully explain things. I think it would be a nice opportunity for people to express opinions as to what they like, what they don't like, and typically what I did the other morning, and I expect to do it again. This evening at this time, is I want to finish up by getting your sense of pros and cons on the tuition agreement. I'll just stay with the tuition agreement and try and get some sense of that. What I'd appreciate you doing, and as in any of our public hearings, at least the first time you speak, if you'd state your name and address. We are live on TV tonight, and following this, I'm going to have some of it transcribed because I really want to take what you have to say and feed it into all of the work that we're doing. So it's really important. So please do that. I'm not showing PowerPoint slides this evening. I think that kind of takes away from the give and take, and so I really don't want that to happen. That's why I've given every one of you a handout for these slides. We can go back and forth on these pages pretty easily. Please stop me anywhere if you've got questions. As we go along the way, just stop and raise your hand or whatever and give me the high sign that you have a question about anything, absolutely anything. So let me begin. As you see at the bottom of page 1, there is a timeline which was crafted first off by Oyster River officials in what they intended to do, and then we blended what we're doing here within the district. The first thing is that on October 2nd, Oyster River agreed to send the offer to Barrington, Deerfield, Newmarket school districts. And since that time, or maybe right at that time, Deerfield dropped out. Deerfield's no longer in the running here. So really it's between Barrington and Newmarket as we move forward. October 17th is the next regularly scheduled school board meeting. What we have to do at that meeting is respond to a communication that was sent to me, and which I have sent out to the board, which came from Oyster River, which basically said we need to respond to them by November 1st as to our intent, as to whether if we were offered a tuition agreement by them, that we would put it on the March ballot. So that's one decision that the board will make on the 17th. And the other that we have to respond to is a desire to, if we have any, to continue to negotiate this agreement. When Oyster River processed this at their last meeting on October 2nd, it was still called a framework, and that's what it is. The same framework went to us as well as to Barrington, but both districts have the understanding that between now and November 6th, we can negotiate any aspect of it with Oyster River. Yes?
Steve Reynolds, 12 Lamper Street. I got an article today that said that Barrington is actually going to be conversing with Dover at a much reduced rate and that they're out of the running now. So literally, Newmarket is the only town available.
Well, they may and may not be out of the running.
$1,000 a year compared to their effective cost of 14, that's going to be pretty significant.
No, I understand, and I don't know what a final agreement may be with Dover, but you also read in that article that one of the things that Barrington appears to enjoy is school choice, and so that was still in that article too. I'll stop right here. It's a good time to talk a bit about Barrington and their circumstances. For a good number of years, Barrington has sent students to Oyster River and Co-Brown and Dover. Every community has to have what's called a public school of record. All your public school students in your community go to this school, whatever it is. And for Barrington, it's Dover. And so most of the students, if not all of the students, were being sent to Dover. And then at some point, there was this, I think, a gentleman's agreement between superintendents who said, gee, I've got some students who might like to go to Oyster River or Co-Brown. Is that okay? And I think it started out with only a handful. But in any case, they were allowed to go to these other districts. And the way that it was done is that all that Barrington would do was pay the amount that they paid Dover. And that Co-Brown and Oyster River were more expensive, and parents had to pick up the difference if they wanted their child to go there. And so now in this school choice world that they have, they send a variable number of students to all of those schools. I think Dover wants to embrace more of the students, get more of them back, if not all of them back. One of the things that drove Oyster River here was what they want is a stable revenue stream. And when you're in a school choice environment, you could have 60 one year and 85 another, and it's really not a stable revenue stream. And so that's one of the things that they were looking for. So to get back to your point, I know what I read too in the paper. I would just say it's not over. They don't necessarily have a deal with Dover yet, and they also have the opportunity to, as we do, to continue negotiating with Oyster River. They could negotiate that rate down, as perhaps we could.
I was just going to suggest that that's probably in our best interest as well.
Sure, sure.
Bring those prices down if indeed that's the direction it happens.
Right.
To say that the direction want it to happen.
Right. I understand. So there's still more negotiations to come, and we may see some things that are in our best interest that might be different from Barrington. Again, Barrington, if you, on the next page, you're going to see it says 250 students, which is what Oyster River was banking on. And Barrington may seek to reduce that number, as an example. And that's really not an issue for us. We want to send all of our students. Okay? Yes, sure.
Buzz Dieterle, Smith Garrison Road. The reason that Barrington is not sending the students to Oyster River is because there's no minimum guarantee in the Dover contract.
Say that again, the minimum?
When Dover struck the contract with Barrington about 10 years ago, because it expires shortly,
Yes.
there was no guaranteed minimum. There was a sort of a discussion of you would send us a minimum students, and I believe at the time the number was around 100, 115. But because there was no minimum guarantee, what happened to Dover was other students started to go by parent choice to the other two school districts. The special needs students went to Dover High. So Dover wound up overloaded with Barrington special needs students without the subsidies coming from the regular students. Dover's intention moving forward, according to the last superintendent of schools, is to negotiate a minimum number of students that have to go to Dover in order to offset the special needs. They also want to renegotiate the special needs portion of the contract. But they also want to maintain the 3 school options choice for parents, so that if they do strike a deal with Dover, they're going to guarantee Dover that minimum number of students, which precludes a certain number of students coming from another school district. It seems that raises the issue that if Oyster River is looking for a stable number of students in the vicinity of 200, plus or minus, pick a number, they're not going to get them from Barrington unless Barrington negotiates a much favorable contract than the $11,000 or $12,000 they just negotiated for the next year. And I would echo what this gentleman said is that the 14.5, given that Deerfield is tuitioning to Concord for something in the vicinity of 11 to 12, I believe, and that Barrington is tuitioning to Dover in the vicinity of the same 11 to 12, under the current structure you have, Oyster River is going to make money. They're talking about selling this to their people because they're going to send them almost $1 million back to their people. I think we're becoming the only game in town, and I think we need to go back and say, look, you know, you're going to maintain your class sizes, you're going to maintain your offerings to students, you're going to fill an otherwise empty school, we're going to help pay for your cost basis. But it seems to me that we should be talking more in the vicinity of $12,000 a year, like everybody else. We fill out their school, they get the benefits of the program, and we get a cost break as a trade-off.
I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. We still have that window of time. In fact, I've already anticipating that the board's going to want to do that, I've already set up meetings next week and the week after. Next week with our group, and then the week after with Oyster River to negotiate. So you make a valid point, and your board members here tonight will hear you. So, okay. So we have until November 6th to do that. That'll be the night that Oyster River will begin to take this up. There was a time when November 6th was the hard and fast decision date, and in the last couple of weeks, that has softened, and I think they're feeling the weight of making a big decision, and so they're now more or less saying November 20th is the more likely date that they'll make a decision. So it pushes it out till almost Thanksgiving. And then the idea is that they will pick just one remaining district, and that is the district that, moving forward, we will work to communicate and what the plan is and what the costs are, and bring it before the voters in March. Now, one of the things that I have to say I'm not clear of, maybe somebody here knows the answer, but I had an impression that in Oyster River that the three communities independently had to agree to this tuition agreement. And then somebody, when I had a public hearing on Tuesday, said, no, I don't think that's the case. I'm still trying to verify that. I'm really not sure exactly how their voting scheme may work in this particular instance. But
What do you mean, that each community would have to go out?
yeah.
Is that what, okay.
That's how the impression had been given to me, that it would be independently. Lee and Madbury and Durham had to all, with majority, support this agreement. But then there was someone who had some familiarity with their cooperative agreement, said, gee, Jim, you need to check that. And I did send off something to them, but I haven't heard back.
Okay.
So I really don't know exactly how their voting scheme works yet, but I'll find out.
Eric will go Chandler Drive. Pretty typically, that's what they do in that district. They vote separately,
yeah.
so I would think that would continue the practice.
I would think so, and that's what I've been led to believe, but this is a fellow who, many years ago, was on the school board in Oyster River, and he was there with the cooperative, so he had some sense.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll check.
Dr. Hayes, their budget doesn't work that way, though. Right. Their budget is like totally.
Right.
Yes, I know that.
And that's been a particular rub over there because
Yeah.
of the way their formula works for allocating their
Yeah.
portion of the school budget.
I know that.
I don't know the difference, but I would be very surprised if
Yeah.
one town had veto power over a tuition fee.
I know. I will find out. It's just a question mark. I want to make sure people knew. Okay. At the on the next page, page 2, I didn't say this at the beginning, but these slides are a combination of a presentation that I did in mid-August, as well as one that I did, I think, September 19th, I think. And so I put together the ones that I think are really pertinent. Back in August, I did a great deal of work in describing all of the elements of this framework, and only a little bit of that has changed. So what I'm going to do here is talk more about what's changed, but I'm still going to review for you and ask questions along the way, any piece that you don't follow. First of all, the tuition rate of $14.5 per student, the beginning in the first year, 2015-16, and that first year we've been pushing for all along because, as you know, we've got this Fire and Life Safety Code compliance deadline of September 2015. So it was really important that we get a solution that is timely. The tuition rate will increase annually by the actual increase in the appropriated operating cost of Oyster River High School based upon the prior fiscal year. So, for example, they would take, if I move forward into this agreement, if whatever the increase is from FY17 to FY18, that's whatever percentage that is, then it's that percentage that's applied to the tuition rate at the time that gives you the next year's tuition rate. So it's really a 3-year scheme. It's 2 years prior, what's the difference, and then it moves it up. Yes?
Mike Daniel, 17 Dame Road. What is our current per pupil rate? Because 14.5 means nothing to me without knowing what we currently spend per pupil today.
A year ago, we were just under 16.2, and just recently we calculated about 16.6.
And in that same vein, do you know what the per pupil cost is in the Oyster River School District?
I don't know for this year, but a year ago they were only about $100 more than we were.
Dr.
16.2,
Hayes,
16.3.
You might want to qualify that, though, because your 14.5, by comparison, for purposes of Oyster River, does not include busing, and I believe some of the
Right,
costs.
yeah, I was just going to
So
say
the
that.
14.5 is not our total cost. Our 16 is not our total cost. It is our total cost, but if you're transferring it to Oyster River,
I didn't put this data in here, but I have looked at that. I think you would find that in a tuition agreement world, in the first year, it's comparable. Okay? The problem is that it becomes a lot more expensive as we move out, because in a tuition agreement, you're paying per student. So your costs go up
I think
considerably.
the thing that I struggle with a lot of the charts and the data is comparative information to compare it against in order to make a decision, right?
Right,
So
right.
14.5 by itself really means nothing.
it's
if
not
our
enough.
Cost was really 16.6,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Without that information, it's hard to.
And I will have that for you. I promise that, you know, if we get an offer and we're moving forward to March, you'll have all of that information. What I didn't want to do tonight is just overwhelm you with data, and I got away from that as best I could. Okay, but you're absolutely right. You need to have that.
Dr. Hayes, I thought one of the charts that you used at your Oyster River presentation had a 2% increase across the board.
And that's what's different here, and to me it's a good thing.
What was the question?
In the previous, when I presented in August, the original, not this new one, but the original one, the increase that was being projected out over the first 8 years was a 2% increase in their total operating cost. And then from there on, that generated the tuition rate. Okay, you divide by the number of students to get the tuition rate. And without going into great detail, that made it much more expensive for us because Oyster River's enrollment was declining,
Right.
while ours was increasing. And so we ended up moving at a much faster pace to higher per pupil costs. And so in this new arrangement, they got away from 2% on the total operating costs, but the growth is on the tuition rate. So that moderates that impact of enrollment a bit. Okay, but again, before it was intended to be 2% for the first 8 years. Those are the years we had enrollment projections for, whereas here, year to year, it's whatever's appropriated. Now, I will say that the 2% figure that we've used all along, and that's why I stayed with it here, that was Oyster River's number. Both districts took a look back on the previous 5 years of expenditures for our high schools. And in Oyster River, their 5-year history was actually a little bit under 2%, but they said, let's use 2%. For us, it was 2.9%, and that's why you see the 2.9% in here. But it's, so this is a little bit different now because it's a year-to-year appropriated that makes a change.
Question, the all-in-district special ed course, does that include like a 3-year update on special ed evaluations for high school students?
Yes.
Everything's included in that?
Yeah, let me jump to that because that's the second 2 bullets here on that top slide. And this is something that is new. In the previous agreement, everything that was special ed within Oyster River High School was included in the tuition. Everything. The only thing that we had to pay outside of that were all of our out-of-district placements, which was somewhere in the vicinity of $500,000. In this new arrangement, and their argument is because we've discounted this tuition, they wanted to feel a little bit safer about what could happen in special ed. When we were in the planning stages, we had meetings with administrators who planned how many new teachers will we need to accommodate the influx of students. And then also, the special ed directors got together. We compared the student population that we have right now in special ed at the school and said, if they were at Oyster River High School, how many staff members would we have to add? And that number was 4 case managers, special ed teachers effectively, and 11 paraprofessional staff. Of the 11, I think 2, maybe 3 were one-to-one paras and the others were programmatic paras. But that was the staffing that was built into the planning. And so when Oyster River, before we were paying for that through the tuition, but now in this new tuition rate, which they consider to be discounted, they said that'll be capped at that level. And so that moving forward, if we exceed that cap, or our enrollment pushes us pushes them to do staffing beyond that cap, then we would be paying for that. Example, if the staffing's at 4 and 11 and 2 students move in that need one-to-one paras, I assume it would be they would hire, they would pay with their salary and benefits, and we would pay that amount. That's never been really clarified. But so it's a cap level, yes.
Nathan Lonnie, Benaway, I just want to throw out, these are a couple of little details that we'll want to chase next week. Because if there's an incremental bill back to the district, it'll also show up in their budget as an increase. And we should make sure that we have language that prevents double dipping.
Right.
If we're going to have to pay cash from the barrelhead for 3 more humans that are hired, that can also be part of a 3% increase
Tuition
in
rate.
operating budget
Right.
that drives our
Right.
tuition rate up. So we
Right.
just detail.
Well, for me personally, and I've said this to the superintendent, I just have a problem with this just on the face of it, because in the real world, and I said this to him, I said, case managers, you are not going to hire case managers that work solely with Newmarket kids, are you? Right, you're not. So how are you going to make that decision as to whether the causal factor is Newmarket or who is, and how are you going to create a real separation there? And then with paraprofessionals, no different. Even one-to-ones, when they're in a classroom, they don't just solely work with that student, right? If they see a need, if I'm working with this kid and you need help, I'm going to help you. And so that naturally happens. So I really am troubled with this just on the face of it.
Is this a typical arrangement for tuitioning, or it feels weird to me, the way that it's all being...
Right.
And so is this typical in other situations where tuition is done?
It can be anything, but I will tell you back when we began over a year ago, I looked at other tuition agreements, and I would say from my experience, the norm is this. You pay a discounted amount for tuition, and then you pay a flat fee above that for every kid who has an IEP.
And that's...
For example, I don't want to quote numbers, but I want to say that Fremont going to Sanborn, I believe there's somewhere around tuition of $15,000, but they maybe pay $7,000 per IEP. So for every special needs student, it's a $22,000 expense. So it can really get expensive, which is frustrating because not all IEPs are the same. Some might be just 2 hours of speech a week. So we, in the very beginning of looking at this, we had some language framed in that way, and then we got away from that. We said, look, let's just do flat tuition for all and not do this special ed thing. And so we avoided that problem, because that is a problem for a lot of districts, I think. But that's more the typical way. Okay.
Sort of back to my question regarding the 3-year evaluations and stuff.
Yeah.
Have you guys discussed that at all in terms of who does that? Like every 3 years, special ed kids have to be reevaluated, or a child might get, or a kid might get referred for special ed at Oyster River High School. Will Newmarket staff, for example, have to do the testing, or is that part of the deal, or you haven't talked about that yet?
Yeah, we have. And once they're there, they're Oyster River students, right? Regardless of where they live. They are Oyster River students, and so I think personally, rightfully, they should control what the education is within their school. But it's really important that we have some input to that. So in the tuition agreement, there is language that says that we will have at every IEP meeting a Newmarket administrator, which we've already pinpointed. It's our Director of Student Services, so we want somebody of that level of expertise to be there. So the team, so they take care of the testing and all of that stuff. If it turns out it's, again, 2 hours of occupational therapy or whatever, that's all inclusive in that tuition rate for the child. It's only if it generates more staff by this, or if it turns out to be an out-of-district placement. So we talked a lot about who makes that decision in the end. Really, it's a team decision for all IEPs, and by and large, it's an Oyster River team of teachers and administrators that will make that decision. If the decision is out-of-district placement, then we get control of where that placement will be, and we pay the bill. Okay?
Actually, that's a pretty good deal. Some of the situations I've worked in, you've had to have your staff go over to the high school and evaluate the kids. And what you end up doing is have to hire additional staff within your school district to fulfill the needs, the evaluation needs of the high school. So that's a plus.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Although some districts, again, I try and get a sense of how tuition agreements are actually working out there. And I think some districts have a real difficult time with this particular issue because they disagree with the decision to place out of district. They think it should be an in-district. And yet in the end, it's the team decision. And it's really not a sending school decision.
Which is interesting, considering it would be our tax dollars paying for those particular individuals, right? So if you start looking at it, it becomes a revenue stream to them from a $500,000 or $1 million a year. Certainly, you would think that we would have more say in that particular in those situations.
Not with an out-of-district placement.
Well,
It's
you know,
more legalities.
I mean, if I were superintendent there, I'd be arguing for the same language because it's your staff, it's your administration that are working with these kids every day. They get to see them every day, and we're not there. And they've got their school to run. I don't disagree with that as long as we've got some say in it. But it'd be very difficult if we had the upper hand on that, I think.
But wouldn't the IEP also, the IEP team is going to try to create alternatives within the Oyster River environment before you're going to sit down and say, let's shut the kid out? I mean, there's a whole process that sort of takes place before you sit down and say, we want to place the kid out. So.
When both SPED directors met, they again talked about what programs do they have. They have similar programs to what we have. They appear to have similar philosophies towards inclusion and keeping kids in the local school. So hopefully it'll be not a lot different than what we experience now. Anybody else? Okay, so that covers special ed. The bottom slide on page 2 just simply shows how this is a slide that came out of the Oyster River presentation to their board, is what they perceive as a revenue streams to their district. I crossed Deerfield off the chart, that's all. But 254 is our projection for that first year in 2015-16. And so far, we've still lived right up to the projections that we have. So I think we're on track to be there. Yep.
I don't know if this is the time to bring this up, but this has been my concern, and it's that 254 number. Because when I look at like, let's take grades 1, 2, 3, and 4 right now.
Yes.
Let's say there's an average of 80 kids per grade. I think that's probably safe to say, maybe more.
I think more.
Right, like which scares me. So on the low end, when those kids hit high school, that's 320 kids. You know, when those kids are in grades 9 through 12.
Yeah.
So, and I know that there's been so much fluctuation in our you know, from elementary school to middle school to high school, partly because of our facility.
Right.
You know, so when that is stable, I don't know that there will be as much fluctuation, or at least that's my concern, or that we might even have more kids in the system. So what happens if we have 300 kids, or 320 kids, or 350 kids?
Great question. Let me try and address that, because there's a lot in that question. First of all, projections of enrollment are based on several factors. One is the birth rate. That's where it starts. And that's why you'd only project out so many years, because nobody wants to step forward and project what the birth rate will be in 5 years. So who knows? So So you got the birth rate, which determines how far out you go, and then you move them forward so many years, and they're in kindergarten and so forth. People that do these projections then take a look at attrition rates from year to year. And so they do those then predictions of year to year where it will grow. I didn't check the elementary school, but today I looked at our October 1 numbers, and the October 1 enrollments are always the key enrollment measure. And for this year at the junior senior high, we've been predicting 244 students. We have 200 in the high school. Right? We have 243, okay? Or 242. We're just off by a little. But the number of kids in the elementary is huge. And you're right, the attrition factor can be for a variety of things, between moving out of town by the time my kids at high school, because there's no way I'm sending them to those deplorable conditions, or I prefer a private school setting, or whatever their rationale is. Those are the attrition factors that lead to where we are. People don't like it when I say it, but my experience in over 4 decades has been, build it and they will come. And I've seen that happen in too many construction projects, that they target a size for the school, and shortly after they open, they've exceeded what their target was. And I think in many respects, it perhaps would be no different if the school of record were Oyster River High School. It certainly is a new facility. If facilities are issue, it has I'll say elite status, but it really, and it does, and I think people ascribe something to that. It certainly has some breadth of curriculum that we don't have, although I'm not embarrassed at all by what we offer to kids. We do a terrific job. And so that may make it more attractive, and so students, that attrition rate may really change. It may really change, and that's the difference. I've explained it this way to people. If 10 students move in today and want to enroll at Newmarket Junior Senior High School, we sign them up, we put them in classes. It doesn't cost us a dime, because we have room within classrooms to absorb a certain number of kids. But if we're in a tuition world and 10 move in and the cost is $15,000 a student, then that's $150,000 more. So to finish that off with what do we do, I am strongly advocating that if we engage in this tuition agreement, that we set up a capital reserve fund for tuitions, because it can be, not unlike special education, very risky to predict how many students in a given year, and you need to have something that's going to capture those unanticipated enrollments.
I guess that's the other piece of it. Can they say, I mean, is that part of the agreement? Can they say, I know that their capping at that 915 number is very important to them. So can they say, sorry, we've reached our max?
Under this agreement, it's a 15-year agreement, and it says they will accept all Newmarket Junior Senior High School students. So for 15 years, regardless of where it goes, they're bound by that, in fact. And to talk a little bit more about length, because it's coming up in just a moment on my slides here, after 10 years, with 5 years to go, then both communities will make a decision, are we continuing in this or not? And so who knows, if the enrollment is projecting higher than they really want to be, then that could be a problem.
And who knows in 15 years if you will need school buildings. With the technology you have now, maybe the kids won't go to school. They will have virtual school. Maybe.
I'm not sure you'll ever get to virtual school, but there is a lot more of that that's growing. We do a terrific job at our school with students being enrolled in online courses through 2 different online systems. So we do a lot of that. In my experience in talking with Oyster River is that they don't do as much of that. I think they only have access to one. They haven't enrolled in the other. I don't think they have many online students.
Yeah,
but I agree with you, it's growing. But is it going to do away with schools? No, not going to do away with schools. There still has to be that human element, and certainly at the high school level.
Sure of that. Looking at the
It's not
looking at
necessary.
Certainly not.
kids now, I'm
So-
not sure.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
You mentioned the issue of numbers and paying by the head several times. In your presentation to Oyster River, you had come up with a methodology that identified that number into the school year by semester, as I remember, so that if X number of kids came in after the start of the school year, you might have to come up with your extra $150,000. But you also just said that our school system could absorb 10 kids, and it wouldn't mean any additions in cost. It seems to me that that's something that should be looked at in the contract with Oyster River. If we add 10 kids to them, it doesn't cost them anymore. Why should we pay that $150,000, at least for that year? Because it's not costing them anything. Now, I understand wear and tear and whatever, and maybe it pushes them into another teacher
Yeah.
the following
Yeah.
year, but it seems to me that we're buying something that maybe shouldn't be buying.
I hear you, but in a tuition agreement, typically it's per student. What he was referring to in the previous agreement and in this agreement, it has not changed, is that we would do billing on a semester basis. So we would have a fall billing, and then come January, we'd do a mid-year billing, and in that mid-year, we'd do a catch-up, if you will, of how has enrollment changed between that October billing and January. And then we'd pay that. And then at the end of the year, once we're all said and done, we're in July, August, September, then we'll do a final catch-up for any changes that came in the latter half of the year. It can be up or down. Yeah, it can be a credit. And I will tell you, I mean, I've worked in high schools for many years. My experience oftentimes is that enrollments don't go up as the school year moves on, at least not this part of the country. So,
I seem to remember reading something that said, you know, if Oyster River population increases and Newmarket population increases sort of on a balance, then it's good. Everything kind of stays the same in the tuition
yes.
agreement. However, if their population decreases and we increase, we bear more of the burden of the price. So essentially, our tuition agreement leaps.
Yes. And it still takes jumps based on enrollment. What is better than the scenario you just described is it has nothing to do with what happens with Oyster River. Because when in the previous agreement, when it was an increase in the total operating cost, and then you divide by the number of pupils to get the tuition rate, if you divide by the total of Oyster River and Newmarket kids. If Oyster River goes down and we go up, and so, well, they end up paying less, and we end up paying more. Pardon me?
That's what it said it would do, actually.
No,
It was a dynamic, first.
it really depends on the enrollments and how they fluctuated. But thankfully, we got away from that because we're no longer dividing by the total enrollment to get the tuition. It's really start with 14.5, what's the change in appropriation? So it really is a more modified growth, and I like that certainly better. You had a question? Lost it. Okay, Nate?
So back to your term, at 10 years, we'd have the opportunity for renewal.
Yes, and they likewise.
And if at that point it was not renewed, we've got 5 years to make ready for 1 grade, and then 2 grades, and then 3 grades, and then 4. Is that true?
That is correct.
So today we're talking about the whole school goes as of 15, 16, they march up the street August 28th, whatever,
Right.
of 15. But on the other end of this, we'll have 5 years to deal with what could be 90 kids or 80 kids or whatever.
What do we do with those kids? Yeah, let me explain that in a different way. We are guaranteed to send all of our kids to that school for 15 years. Even if after 10 they say, sorry, we're done, We still have 5 more years of sending all of our students there. We asked for the 5 years because it's really important that we have a long planning period. If you think that the alternative then is building a school or an addition onto a school, typically construction of that scale would be up to 24 months. So there's 2 years. Typically, around 8 to 12 months would be in doing all of the design documents and going out to bid. So let's say that's 3 years. That leaves you 2 years to do your political wrangling, to figure out what you're doing. But again, at the end of that 15 years, any students that are going to Oyster River High School will be allowed to continue their education right to the end. So in the 16th year, students continue on as sophomore, junior, senior. In the 17th year, sophomore, junior. And in the, junior, senior. And then in the 18th year, it's just seniors finishing up.
But during that time, we need to determine what to do with the freshmen and the sophomores.
Well, and that's right, and that's what the 5 years is for. That'll give you that, that window.
So if a student starts as a freshman there, they will finish there?
That's right.
Yes.
That's what you're saying?
That's right.
Got it.
They're all guaranteed, right. And that's no different from the discussion around Barrington. And it's not clear how many Barrington students will be going there when we start. But Barrington will be phased out at some point if we're the partner.
But at that time, you're paying for the students to continue on and graduate, at the same time scrambling to figure out what the heck you're going to do with the incoming freshmen. So you're figuring out how to get twice the amount of finances out of what previously was just a single issue.
Yeah, it was more complicated with the first model, not with the current one, because now again it's solely what's the tuition rate and how many kids do we have, not how many Barrington kids are there and so on.
But the risk is that we're prolonging, potentially, the risk is that we're prolonging building a school in 10 years that may, instead of being $50 million,
Oh, for us.
$75 million.
Oh, absolutely.
Or on the other hand, it actually works.
Hey, hold on. Let me, please don't speak out.
Yeah, so on the other hand, it does work and it does go in perpetuity. I'm just saying, it's a risk.
Yeah.
Yes?
I would just comment, the editorial on that is, it's good for students, I think, because it guarantees them where they start, they graduate.
That's important.
But
I
it could
agree.
be a challenge if that doesn't get renewed, because we have to come back without the economies of scale and try to take on 1 grade and then 2 grades.
Right.
And you're bringing on administrative and other overhead, and you're spreading over a small number of kids.
You're right.
Transportation as well.
You're right.
So we would be paying for transportation
You're right.
to Oyster River and they'd have to-
That's correct.
In the event that, it's not renewed and, so it's very hypothetical.
It is.
Right.
Very.
Yeah. I mean,
Now,
All right, let me-
is there a point, there was a point, I think you said in your prior presentation, where we would have perhaps the option, or they would offer the option to join Oyster River Cooperative?
Yes,
At what point is that?
after 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, I think, to reflect the team of people from Oyster River that met with our team, I think they feel that if we broach that as we want that in year 1, it would be a non-starter. Okay, just wouldn't happen. And so the 5 years gives us time to understand how well this relationship works, and certainly has at least a set of freshmen go all the way through. So you really start experiencing, you're accepting the change, if you will, and so you know better, do we want to really buy into this? The language in there says that we will form a study committee. My understanding of the law says that if we didn't even need to have that in there, that if we say we want to have this discussion, they are bound by the law to have that discussion with us. Doesn't mean they're bound to do anything. And it's a study group. I have tried, and still I'm not successful, but I think I'm inching closer to some facts around what it will cost and what is the political process for joining a cooperative. Again, theirs is a K-12 cooperative. which means that the cooperative school district owns the schools. It isn't like Lee owns, what is that, Mastway School? It isn't like Lee owns Mastway School. It's the cooperative owns all of those schools. So as somebody who wants to be a partner with them, we have to buy into that infrastructure. So I know there's some methodology to that. What would really be confusing is that we're looking at ourselves as a 9 through 12 entity, and how that would ever get blended into a K-12, I can't conceive that. And that's why when the superintendent and I have talked about it, we've talked about, if you're going to do a scenario at all, do one as a K-12 scenario. Now again, what that means is then if we buy in, that means the cooperative owns our facilities.
The Exeter Cooperative is exclusively for the middle school and the high school. The independent towns have their own school boards for each of the elementary schools. Stratham has their own school board for the elementary schools.
And you can do that.
Back and get their own school.
But they're all the same.
They're all already there.
No, but what I'm saying is if it doesn't seem like it necessarily has to be an all or nothing.
Well, it may and it may not, but think of it this way. I mean, the key piece isn't just the ownership. The key piece...
We have an elementary school.
Excuse me.
Madbury doesn't lead it.
That's what I'm saying.
The key, to me, the key piece is having a vote at the table. Because part of this agreement is that we would have non-voting representation. I think people really are interested in having voted representation. And so how would your vote, if you're a 9 through 12 vote and the others are a...
Well, you have
you understand the complexity.
Sitting on the cooperative school board representing the middle school and the high school and maintaining our school board for the elementary.
Their board is already K-12. I think there'd be a hard political process
Would make it probably
to do
even
that.
harder.
But again, there's a study committee that gets formed, and my understanding of that process is it will take some time, but they definitely would form it, and we'd find out. Okay? Let's see. The only part about the arrangement that I have not mentioned, the agreement, is that if after 10 years the agreement is, yes, we like this, let's continue, then the extension is 8 years. And that's 8 years beyond the 15. Okay? And so from thenceforward, whenever there's 5 years remaining in the agreement, you make another decision, a go, no-go decision, and if it's go, you add 8 years on the end of that. Okay? What also stays the same in this, you see the bottom slide there, it's sped out of district. I've really already explained that pretty much. On the next page, transportation, we, under this agreement, would be responsible for our own student transportation. I've worked with the transportation provider we have now, estimated 3 additional buses, so instead of the 5 that we have, we'd need 8. And we've worked out runs that would perhaps be a little bit longer, may have to leave a little bit earlier, but doesn't sound to be outrageous. And so I know people may not like that word, but to me outrageous is when you've got students on a bus for an hour or more. So I don't think it's really extending us beyond a whole lot beyond where we are today, which is a good thing. And that's only for middle school and high school students. The elementary runs would remain exactly as they are today.
Can you speak a little bit to why the transportation would be kept so separate? The reason I'm asking is because, Oyster River School District buses do go through Newmarket on a couple of routes already every day. Would make sense that one at least, cooperate and augment their existing routes rather than keeping everything totally, utterly separate with a hard wall in between. Just because if you have a bus running, up Wadley Falls Road, coming up from Packers Falls, going up Wadley Falls Road, might as well pick up Newmarket students on the way rather than sending another bus the same route.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I understand that, and I think we all recognize that. That's why there's language in here about studying it. Our current transportation agreement runs through 2014-15, so it gets done just as this would be starting. So at some point in a year or so, we'd start working with them on.
So this is
to
not a
see.
set.
It's not a done deal, and we'd have to look at it, but I would say to you, I don't mind saying, it was kind of interesting in a recent meeting, we were talking about our transportation increases, and the Oyster River superintendent said, we have 3 times as many buses as Newmarket, and we pay 4 times the cost. So that tells me they're perhaps a more expensive operation than what we're funding. Now, can there be efficiencies like you just described? We already got a bus on the road, sure. But if we're going down this road in 2014-15, we'd go out to bid, and they would be one of the bidders, and we'd try and work something out. Okay?
What is the projected cost for busing?
He asked the projected cost for busing students to Oyster River. I don't remember the exact amount, but I want to say per bus it was around $55,000, $56,000 per bus. So multiplied times 3, you're up in 160, 170, and then it grows. Our contract now grows by 3% a year. So I think with each year it jumps up. Capital cost, there's language in here that it is included in the base tuition rate. Now again, wasn't that long ago, 2004, that they did an addition renovation to their school. So at this point, there's nothing that they see on their horizon that is a major capital cost. But could something happen? Sure. And if it does, then that gets rolled into appropriated to appropriated because it gets included in the tuition agreement. Yes?
So if there should be, if we should have a tuition agreement with Oyster River and the capital costs are included, and at some subsequent date, there's an end because there's a non-renewal, is there a mechanism for them to refund us that which we've invested now in their buildings that we don't own?
No, there's not. No, there's not.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
And you might have said it, but just trying
Ask
to
it
understand
anyway.
Karen Paulsonetti, Stonewall Y. So if they decide to do something to their school, whether it's so-called needed or not needed, and it increases the cost.
Their operation, yes, right?
We have to pay for it. It's
It's
an addition to
a capital
say
expense.
in that.
And it goes into the total. Let's say it costs $15 million to operate their school, and they do $1 million improvement in their heating system, whatever. Then that is then $16 million. That is then the amount that you compare year to year. And you say, how much did the cost go up? And then that translates into the rate increase on tuition.
And we have no say in that because we're already in contract.
No, you don't. You don't. By this agreement, no, you don't have a say.
Okay.
According to your example, we have a prorated amount. We're not committed to paying for that capital improvements. We're no longer there. If I understood your example, they put $1 million in, they bonded for 10 years. First year the bonding comes due, we pay our fair share of that first year of bonding. But if we're not there to pay that
No, but I think getting to Nathan's question, suppose the $1 million is just done without bonding, right?
Well, for all practical purposes, it took us 3 times to get the renovations, which they finished in around 06.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that the politics of Oyster River right now is that they're not going to spend any serious money for the next foreseeable future.
Oh, I agree with you. And I think, and it's fair to say, well, it can happen.
I mean, but they just got done making a presentation, just talking about how they're going to use the extra dollars for capital infusion. So I think we can't miss the fact that part of this is adding money to their revenue stream that allows them to do capital without taxing them.
But not necessarily at the high school. Because I've seen their capital improvements plan, and they've got issues at their other schools, and that's, I'm sure, where their priorities would be.
So it won't even necessarily benefit our students in their high school. It might benefit their middle school students.
Yes, but it doesn't translate into our tuition rate increase.
The only thing I think they're discussing right now is putting in doing athletic fields over in Woodbridge. And I don't know if they're planning on getting that done beforehand or not, but I believe they're getting serious about a full stadium of some kind for the sports.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I don't know if you heard him, but let me repeat it. One of the things that and I have no idea how far along the concept has gone, but I think there's some interest within their Oyster River School community to create a stadium and if we join with them, maybe there's a football team, who knows, or a track. That's a capital cost that would be for the school. But that's the only thing, and again, I would say, from my reading of our discussions, it was a very preliminary idea. But they do have capital issues in their other buildings, no question about that. Okay, other students, these are pretty straightforward things, allowing dual enrollment, which is what we do here in this district, allowing a foreign exchange student to live in Newmarket and go there for free. Career and technical education, we send all of our students to SST in Exeter. Under this agreement, or under the state's decision, we're no longer able to send them there. We have to go wherever Oyster River students go. Primarily that is Dover and Somersworth's career technical centers. And this, so the tuition covers all fees. And you see this, should any other costs be incurred. What really that means, at SST we pay a tuition rate and then we pay an additional fee for any students with IEPs. At Dover and Somersworth, that's not the case. They just pay the tuition rate. So their argument was, if either one of those schools then said, oh, let's tack on a SPED fee, then we would pay that under this agreement. Yes?
In the 2015 that are currently at SST, will they be able to finish out their programming?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so, but I did communicate with superintendents both in Dover and Somersworth and said if we sent, because we have, at the time we had 61 students. I think now we have somewhere around 56. And I said if we sent these students in these programs to your school, can you absorb them? And the answer was yes. So they should, without any issue, be able to continue their second year, if you will, at either one of those schools. Yes?
Question, aren't we going to know, because the SST just goes junior and senior, correct?
That's right.
So couldn't the juniors going into it start at the Dover one, if that's the choice that's made, as opposed to going 1 year there and 1 year here? Like, why do these kids have to suffer for the decision that's made?
I don't know that's necessarily suffering. This program continuity that is not an issue. They're just going to be in a different place.
I mean, I don't know.
With different students, yes, just as high school will be with different, you know, they'll be going to those schools with some of their classmates, you know. I want to say something here too, just so you have full understanding, because we're dealing a lot with a lot of nuts and bolts here. Schools have different degrees to which they encourage students to take career and technical courses. And you can tell in conversations with Oyster River that we are different schools. That at the junior, senior high, for a good number of years, we emphasize this as another path to get to college. And that's why we see large enrollments going there and good numbers of students going on to college afterwards. I can tell you that Oyster River feels they're not in that place. They wish they were. They wish more kids went. They have a lot less students who go on to career and technical schools. And I think for us, a lot of it has to do with how students are guided when they're doing course selections with guidance counselors. And we do, I think, a terrific job of saying, no, you need to take a look at this. And this, you know, the days of you going over there to learn a trade and forget about college, those are gone. And, you know, I'm really proud that at SST, of all of the sending schools, of our percentage we send, we are the highest in terms of kids going there for pre-engineering, which I'm thrilled about. So that's a good thing. But I will tell you, it is a different, I won't say philosophy, but a different culture at this point that either directs kids to career and technical or not. And I just thought you should know that.
Tom Spike, 8 Lamprey. I think Dover covers that role. I think they offer a lot of special ed, but they also offer a lot of career tech. And on the other side of Rollinsford now is tuitioning into Marshwood
Right.
for this next coming year.
Right.
But Marshwood as a unit makes use of Dover for a lot of
Yeah.
its technical, as well as
They're
Stanford.
fine, they're fine schools. And beyond that, I mean, SST provides terrific education, but they have more options available going there. You know, electrician, fire and life fire safety, leadership. They have a lot of options that our kids don't have access to now. So it is a good thing in
Well,
that sense.
I was going to say that I find it difficult when I try to deal with the details of this. I don't think we can approach this like a poker game where we're trying not to lose. If you entwine these two communities for 15 years, it changes the demographics, the per capita income, it changes everything. Mostly on our side, I think. The two communities won't remain the same. And I can't imagine unentwining that 15 years from now when construction costs would have tripled and say, well, we're not part of this. These two communities will change. They'll be, it's more likely it'll enlarge as a unit.
I would certainly hope so. Because in this whole thing, we're really, from my perspective anyway, looking for a good long-term agreement.
Right.
Not something stopgap, but something that will stand up over many, many years.
Yeah, I would just offer the editorial comment, and I think Mr. Blasky and a few others that have lived here a long time. We've been here 35 years or so. When we came to town, when I spent a lot of time here in high school, Durham and Newmarket were like oil and water.
Right.
I mean, I remember a town meeting at which somebody in Newmarket stood up and said, if it has anything to do with Durham, we don't have anything to do with it. And today, you know, look at downtown Durham, look at downtown Newmarket. You know,
Right.
very
It's very different, right? Right.
These two communities on their own with separate school systems and separate governments have essentially culturally grown together.
Yeah.
I think today there's a lot more similarities than there are differences.
Yeah.
I would still argue the sentiment is.
Say that again?
I said I would still argue the sentiment is still there, significantly so.
Well, I don't deny that it is, but I think what it was 30 to 35 miles from there.
It may have,
And-
yes.
And to
yeah.
be fair about it, you know, there's people in Durham that, you know, they still put their nose in the air.
Sure.
But I think they're fewer and fewer, and I think you put two school systems together, and you guys, as the person just said, you jump 15 years down the road. I don't see it as an incompatible, you know, marriage.
I certainly agree with you. My interest is not 15 years down the road. My kids are in the school system now. Right, so that identity is gone. Right? The whole idea of what their small town look and feel is, of what we've developed here, is essentially gone in 2 years.
Oh, and that's...
I mean, I can tell you for, again, editorial, right? But I will withdraw my kids from the school if they go to Oyster River.
And that's perfectly fair comment.
I know, and I'm curious where other people's sentiments are.
But when you have a school board member making a comment that's put into the
In a public
newspaper
forum.
that says that they would not agree
Want
to
our test scores.
They want to separate the test scores between Newmarket and Oyster River, and in a very callous and not even roundabout way, pretty much saying that we're second-class citizens. I mean, I guess I'm concerned about that. And when you take polls for the middle school, and by and large, our middle schoolers are saying, we do not want to go to Oyster River. I mean, and I'm glad Tom kind of brought it from the dollar and cents to the person that we're
Yeah.
talking about. We're talking about our kids.
Right, right.
And I personally, with a junior in high school and an 8th grader, I'm seeing, okay, my junior's graduating from Newmarket, but my 8th grader's not happy about this. So I'm thinking, you know, from a very emotional standpoint,
Right.
what's best for my kid.
Sure.
And when you have, you know, 50, 60, 70 students that have grown up together since kindergarten, it's a beautiful thing, and they know each other, and all the parents know each other.
If you had any opportunity to watch some shows that I did last spring and summer called School Spotlight, when I talked with kids in classes, and one of the things I did was try to ask them an open-ended question. So how do you feel about Oyster River or a new school or whatever? And just let them express it. It was always so impressive how well they spoke about what they were experiencing at that school. And it is a very, and I will tell you quite honestly, a very special place. There are many schools that try to create what we have, and that is a really cohesive culture of kids and teachers and respect and all really working together.
You know,
It doesn't happen
I think
everywhere.
that it's important to focus on the education that our students are getting,
Right.
and, you know, not to
Yep.
revisit your words of deplorable infrastructure, but
Right.
the building does not make the education. It's the teachers and the relationships that
Absolutely.
they build. I teach at Exeter High School, which is an unbelievable place to work, and I love it, and I love the building, but I love it because of the people that work there. And if it were Newmarket, and if I had a ceiling tile that's crumbling and, things that needed to be replaced, I would still love it because of the people I work with.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
I want to come back. Go ahead. Yes.
I, for one, I went to a school where my graduating class was 350 kids, and I, for one, can say we stayed here and bought a house here because of the small town and the community, and the fact that there are so many volunteers and people go out of their way to help, and these kids have a sense of community and belonging, and I think that with the Oyster River, it's going to rip that all apart.
It's very difficult. I spent 15 years as a high school principal, so I know very well. I've been principal of high schools as many as 1,300 kids. And so for many years there's been efforts to create schools within the schools because they realize that small cohesive structure is really an environment where kids can thrive, and you're less likely to have kids fall through the cracks. And I can tell you, as somebody who tried, it's very difficult to create that environment. You can still have a very positive environment. I'm sure you do at Exeter, and certainly the schools I was principal of, I was very, very proud of the cultures that we have and what kids got. But it's very different from what's achieved here in Newmarket. And it's hard.
It's natural. There's no other way to be.
It is, and again, if you haven't seen those testimonies by kids, you should listen to them because their words are really striking in what they do. And what I tried to do each time I talked with them is say, okay, who here began school somewhere else? And so you try and gather their perspective from one school district to this, and it's commentary worth listening to. I want to come back to some comments that the two of you made too, though. I agree. I think that the sense, certainly the work that we did with the representatives from Oyster River, I thought it was a terrific group of people, and I didn't sense any of it. Was all about kids. It was really all about kids in the work that we did, and I sensed very little of the, well, we're Oyster River and you're Newmarket. Okay? But I do think it's still there. I read those comments that you're talking about. I will tell you, without going into great detail, I was surprised of some similar kind of thinking when we talked about rank in class. Think about our students going there. We're going 9 to 12 all at once. So you move over in 1 year. Now how do you do rank in class? And so it was there's no decision on that. There's nothing in here about rank in class. And that's something that we all agreed, whoever the sending and receiving principals are, they will work out those kinds of details, and I'm sure it's a policy decision that will ultimately reign. But it was just kind of surprising that it wasn't what I expected.
Dr. Hayden, in that context, though, I think it's important to point out that the polling that Oyster River had done, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, the Oyster River people are in favor of tuitioning students in.
Yes.
And while there are some small differences as to which districts they prefer to tuition in, essentially it's a statistical, it's irrelevant to the statistics that overwhelmingly Oyster River is willing to tuition in at that time any of the 3 districts and now any of the 2 districts. So while you have some people that feel that way, the other comment that I would make, though, and I don't want to get off the point tonight because I know we're talking about tuition agreement, but their comments about the small school system comes back to being given 2 choices, the $15 million school plus or minus, or this. And just for the record, I will raise the issue again. I think the school has missed the boat by not going back to the campus concept, thinking it as a campus concept, Brown as a campus concept, and what that has allowed them to do, it's allowed them to build a piece at a time. Brown has just expanded and built some more on the other side of the road. Pickard is working through it, but they now have a freshman building. They put all their freshmen in one building. I am convinced, and I think some of us, other folks in town are convinced, that if you were going to spend $20 million, pick a number that I think is palatable to voters in this town, and to start a campus construction project, that these people would vote for it because they stay in town. I would vote for it because I think it's a reasonable amount of money. But in giving the people sort of two all or nothing projects, we send them to Oyster River, or we build a $50 million school and raise the tax rate beyond what many of us can afford, we're between a rock and a hard place. I don't want to complicate the issue, but I think, but it is a complicated issue.
It sure is. I tell you. Yes, it is.
If you give people two options, you have a problem. If you give them three options, they're going to pick the one in the middle.
Yeah, I understand.
And I'm still convinced that you need to give us that option in the middle. And I think the option in the middle is the campus concept.
I do understand that.
You build yourself a science center, you build yourself a core facility center across the street that costs us the $10, $15, $20 million, and then over time, you build.
Or you renovate and you put money in the budget to deal with the issues. I mean, when you look through the documentation, all you read is it's expensive. It's expensive, but that's all there is in the commentary. There isn't anything about what does expensive mean, or we fix the fire and safety issues, right? And the school stays open, but now, okay, we lose the weight room, but that may mean build an addition and the weight, and that costs however many $1 million or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we get the weight room back. And next year, what is that project plan in order to address the issues where it's not an immediate tax impact and it's not perpetual, right? The bond that whatever we get will be done in 20 years, and that tax rate comes down. And then we don't have the 320 student issue.
And we have something left. It's like renting a house versus buying a house. It's leasing a car versus owning it.
I understand.
So
Thank you.
I
yes.
agree with that point.
Go ahead. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jean Ormrod, Eagle Drive. I'm just getting a little frustrated here because I sort of came to hear what this was, and we've gotten off target here. And I'm really sympathetic to all the strong feelings on both sides. I'm not trying to just dispel those, but I'd sort of like to go through.
And we're going to. To me, we're not. To me, I understand. It's kind of going like this, but it's touching all the bases I expected to touch before the evening was over. So, so I'll bring it back, and we'll come back to those comments some more. On page 6 now, I'm at the top here about board involvement. I've already explained the cooperative, joining the cooperative piece. We would have non-voting representative at their meetings, and we would have joint meetings in the year. Down below, under high standards, it basically means that the school will not only meet the DOE approval standards, but will be accredited by either NASC, as we are, or some other accrediting agency. On page 7, under program, it's important that the two districts be working together so that it's a seamless transition for ninth graders as they move, or students as they move into their ninth grade year. So we talked about curriculum coordination as well as professional development and school year calendars. Then all of that, it's important that we work together for the betterment of the kids' experience.
Just a quick comment. I had an issue with the word encouraged. I felt there should be stronger language, or you should negotiate stronger language. I agree with you. It's real important, especially if this agreement passes and you have that year before the kids go, that there be meetings with Oyster River and 7th and 8th grade teachers here in terms of coordinating. So encouraged seemed too mild a word for me.
Yeah.
Because it's so important.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't troubled by it. I mean, if you're in the meetings, there's clear commitment. We have a clear commitment, but in terms of a contract.
Well, you were at the meeting, so you felt there was a clear commitment?
Yeah, really.
Okay.
Really did. But I understand that that's not a strong contractual word, right?
Yes.
I get it. Okay.
I'd like to just add 2 cents on that, is that I think this particular concept really puts Newmarket a leg up on Barrington, where we would be sending all of our students to their school districts. So our curriculum can be really sculpted to fit in well with theirs, where Barrington is sending some students to Oyster River, or to Oyster River and to Dover. They don't have that,
Yeah, they just
that
do it
laser
with Dover.
focus.
They do it with Dover, but that's it.
All right, on the student affairs, it just means our students are all held accountable to the rules and regulations of their district, and we have access to all the records that are necessary to understand how students are
So
doing.
if a student is in the discipline mode,
Yes.
and is expelled, we have no say? In other words, then it becomes the school district's responsibility, Newmarket's, to educate that child? Is that how it works? Or will you, for example, be a disciplinarian?
Normally, it doesn't become our responsibility either. The student's expelled, and typically other districts do honor that. You know, it's their burden.
Unless
And
it's a
oftentimes
special
they go out and they go to private schools, or they have to solve it some other way.
So you would have, this district would have no involvement in disciplinary hearings?
Our district, yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
That's correct, yeah. But again, talking to them about their philosophy and how they work, they can't conceive of a situation where they would expel a student. However, there can be obviously some really gross violation of law where they have no choice.
Stuff happens.
It does, yes. Yes?
I watch Oyster River's meetings every time. This stuff has been talked about. In terms of students being disciplined, they said they would be in cooperation with you as the superintendent or the Newmarket School District. That would be in cooperation, not just them making the decision.
Okay, I can't say I heard it that way.
That was discussed.
I can't say that I heard it that way. He said that there'd be cooperation between the districts on student discipline. I can't,
Well, not in
a routine, but if,
drugs or stuff like this would be between two communities.
well, I think there'd be communication, I understand.
You'd be advised.
But it's it's really their call
But it's also,
and their rules.
It's also our child.
It's our child, but if we expel a student, they can't then just go to another public school, I think, under the laws of how this works.
This is between two communities.
Yeah, I know. But when they go to Oyster River, they are Oyster River High School students.
Right, but
Okay?
it has to be a serious discipline I'm talking about, not just.
I understand.
Class,
I understand. Let's see. Oh, and then on page 8, there's the contract administration process of how the voters are done. If any element in the contract is invalid, that doesn't invalidate the contract. And then there's a dispute resolution process that's there. The second slide shows a recommendation that I provided to the school board on the 17th. This is the gist of the motions that you should be making. And then the rest of this gets into more, again, repetitions of projected costs of the tuition agreement. Where am I here? Okay. And you can see at the bottom of page 9 the projections that we have for enrollment and where they appear to be heading.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Earlier you talked about the question about attrition in the Newmarket school system and what would happen if we were going to Oyster River. Have you taken a look at what the attrition rate at Oyster River is? Transitioning from elementary to middle to high school?
I haven't, no. I just rely on their projections as to what
Well,
they
I'm
see.
looking to see what attrition we might experience after we've been settled in there.
Yeah, I haven't looked
We
at
took
that.
on the role of those schools.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I don't think the attrition.
The enrollment's going down, but in terms of how many kids,
Yeah, how many kids when they get to 8th grade go to St. Thomas or
Right.
go to Phillips Exeter?
Right. I don't have a
because they
feel
don't
for
want
that.
sugar.
Yes, right.
Question. On the-
Yes, you had a question.
On the March 2014, on the ballot or not,
Yes.
is that a decision will be made to tuition in? Or is that, will the build a new school tuition in, is that all part of the same March 2014?
Well, we haven't, as a board, I can't say we really fleshed that all out.
Okay.
But what I perceive as a reasonable approach is the March would be a decision for a tuition agreement. And then we have to know, do we commit to that or not? And then perhaps a special school district meeting in the spring or early summer that then gets to step 2, which is, all right, now what are we doing about facilities if we've got a game plan for that?
We couldn't do that in March at all, one vote?
Might be more confusing.
I mean, if we got an agreement, and if, I realize there's a lot of if.
I don't know, I worry about what if you get one and not the other, and so I...
Because what happens, pretty much, Tom Jennings, back to Swells Road.
Hey, Tom.
One of the things, and, you know, my son plays football for Durham, Oyster River Youth Association. I just want to say those people are great. I met a lot of great people over there. The reality of this whole thing, just as I view it without getting into the school building or the tuition, in the past 10 years, twice, the town was asked, do you want to tuition the students out? Overwhelmingly, yes. This past March, you asked us again. The vote was 6-1 for it. So whatever is said, one way or the other, that's what the town wants. I mean, we can argue about that point, but the town has showed the board this is the direction they want to go.
Although I would say, in all fairness, when we asked last March, it was without any of this explanation.
Yeah, no, I'm saying,
It's certainly, you know, at that point, I took it as, this is a viable avenue to us, and you should continue exploring it.
And I respect that if it's left on. I don't think there should be multiple ballot questions with facilities. If this gets voted down, fine, we go on. That shows we want to build a school, but I think you're going to get half the people voting for this. You won't get enough to build a school, and then we'll be with no option.
But I think the vote was to explore tuition agreement. And this
Back
is-
then it was, right.
and
This would be committing, this would be a vote to commit, I don't know what the right words are. You're committing to 15 years.
Yep.
That as long as Oyster River gives a thumbs up,
And they'd have to vote too.
then they have to vote too. But if everybody gives a thumbs up, then it's a done deal, and we move forward. And the reason I think of this two-stage process is, what if it fails? Either reason, them or us. Then our special school district meeting will be something very different than had it passed. So that's why I see splitting it up.
Previously, it was the $50 million school or tuition. I mean, it was something seemingly unattainable financially for most people. And I mean, the fact is that most of the people that come out to vote are maybe of the non-children generation and maybe fixed income and can't afford a tax hike. I don't see a lot of parents even here tonight. I see very few teachers and staff, and it's disappointing. So when we say that the town voted 6-1, no, the portion that came out to vote voted 6-1.
Well, that's the nature of it.
It is a reality.
All right, let her speak, please, let her speak.
But I guess it would be, you know, you've got this huge dollar, you know, value for this new school or tuitioning out, so I think it kind of lended itself to us choosing the tuitioning over the new school.
But the tuitioning is here now. We have to decide.
It's here now, and we have to decide, and I see that as a standalone decision, that then, if it goes one way, we go this way. If it goes the other way, we go this way. And the question is, what are those ways? And you know, certainly, we've had suggestions tonight that it's not necessarily a $50 million high school, and so I need to do, and I know with the board, provide as much information to you in clear, succinct terms so that you know if it's this, then you know what your options are, and you know you have the data you need to choose the right path. That's how I see it.
And I think if you're not in favor of tuitioning, you vote that you're not in favor of tuitioning, regardless of whether or not. That doesn't have to mean you're in favor of a $50 million school. It just means you're not in favor of tuitioning.
That's right.
It's just that I think if we get too many questions, it gets confusing.
That's why I personally, I think you keep it separate. I agree.
It's yes or no to that question. That doesn't
Right.
mean you're saying yes to the school, a new school either.
But whatever, that to me then what happens is I wouldn't want to delay to the following March to do step 2.
Right.
I want to have a step 2 for either direction. Okay.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
The thing I would mention, though, is that in the context of, you know, we're going through all this tonight, and they all have very valid questions. But the bottom line when we vote next year, other than do we want to keep our kids here or send them there, is the dollar amount.
I agree.
The premise of this is that it won't cost us more, and the hope is it'll cost us a lot less. And I understand that that's a question in flux. But this 20 pages is not what's going to be on the ballot. What's going to be on the ballot in most people's minds are two things. Do I want to send my kids out of town? And is this a better financial deal than building a new school? And
Or whatever step 2 is,
right,
if it's not new school.
Right, but the clarity has to be the dollar sign on this.
I agree. I agree. And I'm not, obviously I don't have it for you tonight and in the 8 weeks ahead, but by the time you get to vote, I hope there's extreme clarity to what your future is.
I got a problem with this.
Go ahead.
You're telling me that the programs don't mean anything?
What program? What do you mean?
Programs that you don't have here in Newmarket compared to Exeter, Oyster River, and Portsmouth. We have the same programs as them? Why is Oyster River want tuitioning students? Why don't they stay at 500 or 600? Answer that question.
I would say this to you, okay?
And they have said
this
it
is,
too.
you know, again, my experience as a principal. If you have 800 kids or more, you have the ability to offer more opportunities to your kids programmatically.
Absolutely.
Without question. The lower you go, and that's what they're experiencing, you have to start cutting some of those. Okay?
Cutting?
Well, they've cut some programs, they've cut some staff.
That's why they want tuitioning students.
I understand that, Chet. No, I understand that, and that's where they want to be. But by the same token, I honestly can tell you, what goes on at that school in terms of preparation for kids is terrific. We have, for the size school, a great number of opportunities. We do a great job with SST. Let me finish, Chet. Come on, don't discount. We do online courses, and we really, you know, it's genuinely personalizing education for kids.
It's expensive too, Jim.
I understand.
Expensive.
I understand
And
that.
you know what you haven't brought out?
No.
That bothers me? The fact that you talked about that kid coming in town, you're going to put him right in that seat in Newmarket and it'll cost us a dime. Right? You said that.
Yes.
What's it cost us right now at the empty seat? We're paying for the empty seat.
I understand.
Well,
I understand.
why don't you say that? You don't say that this is a good deal because if we have kids coming in, we got the seat to put them in, then you're telling me I'm paying for an empty seat.
Take a look, if you would.
I'm not going to take a look, Joe. I'm telling you that this is a problem because if you have 250 kids in your school, you don't have the programs, and we're paying for empty seats.
Right now, the deal that's here today is more expensive than if you stayed.
Not what I mean. What I mean is you have not projected the student body that we have in terms of numbers in the classes. I hate to say it, but we're paying for empty seats in that school in Newmarket High School. And that's the reason why
We have
Mr.
small
Ritter
class
said the
sizes.
same
I
thing.
agree with you there.
We have to put people in those seats to keep our programs, to better the education of our students, to meet the 21st century education. And without those numbers, we can't do it. They come around and said it. And not once, but at least a dozen times in the last month or two. So what are we doing here? Trying to tell us about building a 50 million high school with 250 kids, and in 20 years you might have 280 kids. If you had 400 kids, you still probably wouldn't have enough. That's what I'm saying.
All right.
I'm paying for this too.
The whole community is.
And I say tuitioning is tuitioning, but at least you're getting them a better education. That's what I'm saying. And I taught 32 years of high school that had the program. And I'm telling you, it's a big difference.
Tone it down.
Yeah.
You certainly have a right to your opinion, and I'm glad you're expressing it.
Absolutely.
All right?
It's costing me money, Jim.
I get it. I do get it.
Big time.
I do get it. Nathan, you had your hand up. You're all set.
I'm not sure if saying they get a better education at Oyster River is factual. I'm looking at the suggested structure for a tuition agreement from August 15th, 2013. And unless these numbers have changed, I'm not sure if everyone has access to this, but there's 2 websites you can find it. And it talks about our graduation requirements in relation to Oyster River. And we're comparable. It talks about our school profiles. We're pretty decent for a small school for what we do. For activities and clubs, we offer a good amount. For class sizes, our class sizes are smaller. But we're seeing that we're comparable for students who are prepared to attend a 4-year college. were higher for students who attend a two-year college. You know, so
I think and I don't want to get into a back and
That's fine.
forth, but what I hear
I
and
want
saying
everyone to know
is
that
at
this
what
is out
cost?
there.
Is at what cost? That's all. Anybody else? No?
Actually,
Yes, go ahead.
To his point, there's a suggestion that it would cost too much money to build a school that would have empty seats. That would lend us the opportunity to take tuitioning students from other towns as well, which then is a revenue stream, no different than what we are doing, what this proposal is to go to another school.
Or we build a school now that we can build onto or expand later.
As the gentleman said earlier.
Now you're sitting with Newmarket half full, Oyster River half full, Somersworth half full, and Portsmouth half full. Come on, what gives here? And where's the programs? Are we gonna be able to compete with the other states? Can we compete with Massachusetts?
I think so.
We have kids going good.
Chet, let me give you, and I don't want to get
I know you were the principal superintendent there, but I disagree with you. They're putting up schools up there left and right, and they can afford it, we can't. We can afford to build a 50 million high school.
You made your point about affordability. I get that. But let me just give you one simple example, and I grant you, it takes a whole set of data to really compare one school to another. But somebody did a study with kneecap scores as to, all right, you don't want to listen.
No,
all right.
I don't know.
You don't want to listen. But we don't take a back seat, Chet. I'm going to tell you that right now. We don't take a back seat, and I disagree with your contention. Yes.
It's just that I think that fate has given us a sequence. The tuition agreement choice is coming first, and it's Oyster River's choice. They don't have to wait around for us to bicker.
Right.
They choose what they want, and
That's right.
That's the first choice we have to make. The campus and what we do with the junior, elementary junior grade, that remains our campus, right? It doesn't become part of the Oyster River system. Our senior
Junior high school, yes, yeah.
The 4 grades go up to the tuition agreement, but our campus for the rest of the classes remain here in our control.
They do, and that's part of our making it expensive problem, because a standalone middle school is more expensive to operate than a combined junior senior high school, and that's what adds to the why this becomes costly. I think net in the beginning it's the same for 9-12 versus 9-12, but it's what happens to the students that remain for 6 through 8, and that becomes expensive because you have certain costs that don't go away just because 9 through 12 left. Right. It makes it more expensive.
Jim?
Yes?
I've heard a lot of people in the audience say that it's less expensive to tuition. I'd like you to walk through.
Sure.
Because I don't think the chart tells us that, but maybe I'm misunderstanding it when we actually do the projections out.
Right.
I just
Let's
don't
see
want
which one.
people to walk out without hearing that.
Yep. Go to page 10 at the bottom. In that chart, the first line is the projected Oyster River, is our projected tuition moving forward at 2% rate. So that means the tuition rate goes up just 2% a year. We know that's not real, but that's a projection. And then in each year you multiply by how many students. And so if you look at the chart up top, you can see that in the middle of that chart, the student population rises pretty fast. And that's why our costs, like in 17-18, they go up by 11.5%. And then the next year 6.1%, and the next year 4.5%. You follow that?
That's on a basis of a base rate of 14.5, though.
That is, yeah.
And you've said you're willing to, you're going to try to negotiate that down.
That's all I've got to base it on right now. But
right,
yes.
But the question will become, what does that base rate have to be to control the long-term costs?
Well, we'll find out, won't we? I don't have that answer. Or what are they willing to negotiate on that at all? I don't have that answer.
Like I said, I think
but before you take a vote, you're going to know. You're going to know.
Did they say why it goes up 2%?
The 2% was their historical number for the previous 5 school years for Oyster River High School.
So their cost is going to go up 2% also, not just ours.
Right.
Yes. Yes. Because it's not 2% every year. It's the appropriation to appropriation.
So what is our percentage rise right here in Newmarket now? Is it 2%?
Our 5-year history has been 2.9%.
2.9%?
Right. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I think is a bit of a problem here, but they really want to be in this prior fiscal year mode, is that you use the appropriated amount. My understanding, they're a district that if they have surplus at the end of the year, I think they've approved to put that surplus back into their rainy day fund, whatever the law is on that. And we don't have that. We have trust funds that sometimes voters put money in and sometimes they don't. So while the appropriated is an important number, it isn't necessarily what gets expended in a school year. So it could be significantly less. But anyway, we're playing appropriated to appropriated. So that's how that tuition expense grows. Again, it's the tuition rate times number of students. Our out-of-district expenses, we took, again, actual expenses for this year and then projected it out into these years at our rate that's been pretty true, a 3% increase per year. Yep.
Now, our out-of-state,
out-of-district
students, or whatever we're going to pay for, is more or less at this point 500,000.
Yes.
Is that going to be for next year and the year after? That's projected that way?
That's how we projected it. Out-of-district is very difficult to manage because somebody moves in and all of a sudden it costs you another 80, 100,000. You know that.
But I knew it was 5. It was that price now, but didn't realize it was going to be for how many years. You projected it.
And I say out-of-district, it's out-of-district placements, which is mostly tuition. The second biggest number is transportation. We have to pay transportation to and from.
Right.
And then you get into some related services that we have to send, as you were kind of describing, we have to send over to that school.
We're doing that now anyway, transportation.
Yes, we do. So that's our actual for this year, projected forward at 3% a year. Then there's the transportation increase that I answered before. You see that it's $165,000 in the first year, and it grows by that grows by 3% a year. That's how our contract is right now, and so that's the number I hung on to.
So I figured that to be about 1.6 million a year for us right now, or yeah, what are we paying for transportation?
Well, Chad, it's roughly, let's say $50,000 a bus times 5 buses, right? Again, that's real rough, the 50,000. I'll just give you some easy numbers to work with. But Tony, you have a question here?
Yeah, you mentioned something that I just want to ask about. You said that they appropriate, let's say they appropriate $2 million, and they have a surplus of $500,000 school year, and it goes into their rainy day. Would Newmarket get some sort of refund?
No. And I asked that question. No, this is how their process works. So they were pretty clear about that. Yep. Because it made sense to me, that's why I asked the question. But
so we're talking here, if you say 5 buses, 50,000 a bus, you're talking like 250,000? With this
right, you asked a question like right now. Right now we're around there, might be 52, okay? And then as you project it 3% a year, you see the 165,000.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
What I'm saying to you is, the numbers I've been hearing at these meetings, it's been 1.6 million for transportation.
Not for us.
Is that for the 8 buses if we tuition out?
Yes.
Is that what you're referring to?
But no, I've never shown a number for 8 buses, because to me it doesn't matter. We're already paying the 5. It's the increase that's driven, that is the result of going to Oyster River.
This is what I heard this number, 1.6 million. I said, where's this coming from?
Maybe we're getting there in a minute. Just be patient, all right? The next to last line is the middle school only budget. What we did administratively is we took this year's operating budget for the junior senior high school and culled out of that everything we felt that we reasonably could. And so what is left over is your your middle school only budget. And I don't have the slides here, but in a previous presentation I gave the slides of here are the positions we would cut, and the money that gets saved, and it's mostly salary and benefits. But it does leave a more expensive school in its place because it's more expensive to operate. And so we then projected that forward at 2.9% a year, and that's the number that you then see running all the way out. So when you add that up, and I'll just look at the first year, 15, 16, it's roughly $8.4 million. And it's important to do the 6 through 12 comparison, not the 9 through 12 comparison, because that middle school is so much more expensive to operate. So then if you flip the page, the top line now starts with that $8.4 million number. So that's what it would take to do 612 in a tuition world. Then I've got a line that says if you take the current, this year's junior senior high budget, and just move that forward at 2.9%, what do you get? And in year one, you get just under $7.2 million. So you get varying amounts of difference as you move through the year, but what it shows is the one, in the first year, basically $1.2 million difference. That means that the tuition world is more expensive than staying with the current operating budget that we have.
That doesn't account for building a new school.
You're absolutely right. Does not.
If we didn't have to build a new school, we wouldn't be thinking about it.
You're absolutely right.
That's right. So apples and apples, you better put the new school in there and tell us.
Yeah, and we have in a previous one, but now I've got other options that I've got to bring forward. So I get that. But my point here is especially in that first year, that $1.2 million is almost totally because you're running a standalone middle school. So you can't get away from that you're going to have a more expensive school to operate. And then the difference grows over the years more because it's that middle school that's growing steadily, but now you've got increased enrollments in tuition as well. So that maybe is this $1.6 million you're referring to. I've never put a number of transportation out there close to that. Never. So then down below, it just takes that difference and says, based on current valuation, what's the tax impact year to year? Any questions on that? Yes, right ahead.
I'm Sherry Hall, 12 Wigan, I didn't tell you before. So when you talk about the school, the 6 to 8 that are staying, there's fire and life safety issues for the building.
At the very least, we have to fix.
We still have to do those.
Right.
Because there's still children in the building.
Right. I believe
So
in
we're
March
not-
you're going to see a warrant article for that.
So that's another additional cost.
Right.
To all of this that we're not getting away from.
Although in a previous presentation, I've given you a number that says to do the remaining project is approximately 1.7 million, except there's one unknown factor, and that is what does it cost to remove all the hazardous materials? I don't know what that could be. It could be another 6 figures, I'm guessing. Okay. When I did that estimate, all I had was an estimate of what the science egress project was going to cost us, and which at the time was $642,000, and now they've done the final accounting, and I don't know exact numbers, but I want to say it's roughly $100,000 less than that, which is a good thing. But we still have to get accurate numbers to fix fire and life safety. And
So I just want to point out that
Right.
these numbers don't even include that.
No.
And we're talking, tuitioning but that's all still having to happen because you still have
With
kids in
either
that
option.
building.
That's right.
So
So one other question.
It's not working.
If fire and life safety issues are fixed,
Yes.
the school would not be closed in 2015, correct?
Correct.
The only thing we would be left with at that point is mechanical or whatever type issues and dealing with whatever space we might have lost due to fire and egress issues, correct?
Correct.
If you build a science center across the street, take your spaces.
Some. The biggest problem with that facility is that the 1924 building and the 54 building need to be demolished. You can fix fire life safety all you want, but there are so many issues in there that can't really be remedied. Well, I say can't. Anything can be done if you're willing to pay through the nose for it. But the architects that look at that say your first step, if you're talking about building on that site, is to demolish that building.
Right, but if you're willing to migrate across the street over time,
I hear you.
as you migrate across the street, you can start tearing that stuff down.
Yeah. Early on with the facilities committee, when the facilities committee met, we talked about operating a school on both sides of the street, and we dismissed that idea as being unsafe and having to duplicate staffing. It just
Jim,
was
and
a
I
concern for
think,
people.
I remember that coming up, and another part of that was that we didn't have a lot of faith that the town would come to the table every 3 to 5 years and approve another $10 million
Yes.
to add another building, because they don't even want to buy a laptop for the high school right now.
Yeah.
So it's really, it was that faith in the ability for the town to come forth every 3 to 5 years to do a step-by-step project. There wasn't a lot of faith in that.
Thank you.
Based on history.
Well,
So-
and I wouldn't put a lot of faith every 3 to 5 years. You'd be talking about significant chunks that you can buy yourself 10, 15 years at a time. You're not talking about something that's going to happen overnight, but you're also talking about something that will be paid for over the next 2 to 3 to 4 coming generations. The problem with a $50 million school bonded over 20 years or 25 years is you're essentially asking one generation of family to pay for that entire thing. When you're building something that's going to last 50 years, it should really be paid for by 3 or 4 generations.
And the counter to that can be this, that 10 years from now, those construction costs are going to be far greater. So in the end, you're going to pay a lot more.
My kids will pay it, not me.
I get it.
My
I know.
grandkids will pay it, not me. I will be able to afford to stay in town. Like
I understand.
Afford to stay in town.
No, I understand.
The town doesn't me no good if I can't afford to live here.
Right.
You're talking about a town that took 2 votes to put in a handicapped elevator
Right.
in that building.
I know.
2 votes. The first
For
vote, they weren't sure
And it
whether
never
the
happened.
elevator should go in there.
Right.
That's the town you're talking
No,
about.
believe me, I know. I know. Yes.
I'm sorry, Allison Monroe, 2 Beatrice Lane. So do you, in terms of going back a little bit to the idea of voting on the tuition agreement or not part, do you anticipate any other possibilities other than the ones that you've already presented as being options to us if the tuition agreement is voted down? I guess what
Other than a new school, I anticipate having information on that. I think we have to.
I guess it's a little bit scary to think about not knowing what all of those options might be and having to make that decision about the tuition. And
What-
whether the new building with or without the auditorium
I get it.
number is still.
Believe me, I get it. What my intention is, and that's part of the reason I want this meeting, is to gather your ideas.
So that would be something that we would have.
That you, I work today on a booklet that has all of the options, that lays out the pros, the cons, the costs, and so that you understand what are our options.
So if there were a new option that were to come about that hasn't been discussed, it would
I'm
be.
hoping it's in that book. That's my aim, and that by the time you go to vote, I want to have all the answers.
Just to be clear, are you talking about the potential of a third option? Tuition, $50 million, or blank? Is that what you're leading us to believe?
I think we have to look at that. Yes, I do. There's no getting around it. Now, do I have it vetted out the same way that we've done with these others? I don't. So there's some unknowns in there. But
No, but I think the point that she's making is that the town deserves to know when they go to vote on this tuition agreement or this tuition option. The only thing they are going to face after that fails is a $50 million school. We need to know that up front. We need to know if it's one or the other, and it's our own choice.
I understand.
And I'm not telling you, I know my preference, but the point is, the school board has an obligation to tell us that.
The school board's going to guide this process.
They're going to say married to $50 million school, fine, that's their choice, but then we as voters have to know it's either tuition, or it's $50 million, or it's $2 more million to live where we are.
One other question. Developing all these alternative plans costs money, right? To have architects come and put together other plans, other than the other
It
ones?
does.
So that also costs money.
It does. I mean, right now, we're looking at the middle school design. We're working on that, and I don't have answers for you on that. But I think in terms of if there are other options, we're not going to have the time to do schematic designs and all of that.
We wouldn't have the money to do that.
Well, I think we need to try and.
Well-
I mean, I know.
No, I hear you, but we won't have, just logistically, we won't have those designs and cost estimates. we may have rough cost estimates and be able to talk about what the implications are, pros and cons.
I think rough cost is better than none.
I hear you. I agree. I don't want anybody to be in the dark. That's my aim. Yes.
I'd like her to explain what she means by a rough cost. She brought it out. What's a rough cost?
You want me to ask her what is a rough cost? Why? I don't think she knows. I think I know, but
Well, I can tell you that the town I grew up in, we built a high school 2 years ago for $35 million, and that's for 2,000 students. So for $57,000 million or whatever
How many grades was that? Was that 4 grades? Or was it
it's
7?
8 through 12.
8 through 12.
And that's 2,000 students.
$40,000.
So for this amount of money, that's absurd. I mean, my brother's an architectural engineer, and he's like, there's absolutely no reason why it should be that high. I think you have to look at other contractors and get different bids. And I mean, they have it, and they
we
have
haven't gone out.
state-of-the-art
We have not
boards.
gone out to bid to any contractor.
No RFI, no RFPs.
Pardon me?
No RFIs, no RFPs for.
None. No, we haven't done that. What
mean, I
we've
think
done is come up with a schematic design and then given that to an independent cost estimator and said, based on what your experience is, and this fellow's very experienced, tell us what this would cost. And he did that over a year ago, and then I had him do it again recently to update costs so that there were numbers that would be good, if you will, for 2014.
Dr. Hayes, you've defended that in the past, and the committee's defended that in the past based on the meet state standards. And I think what's part of what they're saying and what a number of us are also saying is that we just can't buy building what the state tells us we have to build if we can't afford it. Great Bay Community College renovated a strip mall up in Rochester. Now, admittedly, the building was there and they don't need some of the things we need. They spent $5 million. They spent $1.5 million in the building. They spent $3.5 million on what they put in the building in the way of high-tech equipment. If you go through that place and you look at the square footage, and I asked them, I said, how many students full-time every day could you handle? They tell me 200 students. So I'm looking at $5 million. I'm looking at 200 students. We're talking 280 students. And I'm saying I can't get from what they spend to what we want to spend. It conceptually makes no sense to these folks and to me.
It makes sense to me.
It does to
Well,
me.
a strip mall in a box for 200 students who
Community
are
college,
adults, where
very
it has a
different.
space and a computer is not the ergonomics that you need for a high school for students to learn in an atmosphere that's sane. You pay for what you get. And I think the 50 million, frankly, is a bargain. I don't think that if you wait, the longer it goes to be 75.
It'll be further out of reach. It'll be further out of
50
reach.
million has to be bonded, so you're talking more than 50 million. You're talking another 10, 20 million, if you're paying a bond.
Oh, we haven't gotten to that yet.
I'm not that naive not to know that. I mean, you're bonding. They don't bond you free.
No, I understand that.
Well, in either case, I mean, we have a big decision to make, and one of the problems that we face is that, one decision requires a simple majority and the other one a much, much higher threshold. So we can talk about, you were talking about apples to apples. It's not as if we are talking apples to apples as far as making the decision as a town. So we have to come to grips, I think, for ourselves. What do we want? Do we want a town that has its own school system, that has its own elementary school, its own middle school, its own high school? Then we need to be willing to stand up for that. Then we need to all stand up for that and fight for that and pay for that. Or do we go along with what Chet is suggesting, which I think is smart, which is, do we try to share the costs for educating our students with other communities around us? Because, numbers bring down the costs per pupil. So, that's kind of the decision that we have to make for ourselves. We can look at these issues and, this costs that and this costs. I think that's not really the decision that we have to make for ourselves. We have to make the decision, do we want a one-town school district, or do we want to try to go and become part of a regional effort. Now, there are risks involved with either one of those decisions. Clearly, there are downs and ups and all of these kinds of things. We just have to make that decision for ourselves. I think we can look at the numbers up the yin-yang. They're always going to look bad. They're always going to look bad. Then none of these numbers look great. You know, they're all going to be great and high, and much higher than we're comfortable dealing with. But I think that's the decision that we have to make as a town. And looking at our past decisions over the past few years, when it came to the opportunity to build a school, we voted it down every time. So my feeling is the likelihood that we will enter a tuition agreement is much, much greater. Since that is so, let's go with that decision, you know, embrace that decision and go into that and try to become a part of that regional system and fully become a partner, not just a minor partner that, you know, has, you know, participation rights on the school board but no voting rights, right? So I think that's where we have to head and get our minds wrapped around that. The times of being a small school in a small town are just over. Or we go a totally risky route and just don't accredit our school by the state or by any other national accreditation agency at all. And who wants that? Create a private school. We could do that, you know, and just accept tuition. But, you know, that's a really wild thing to do. So I think, you know, make that decision for yourself and let the numbers come after that.
The key word you used was town. You build a $50 million high school in this town, you won't have a town.
Right,
you don't have any elderly.
Right.
Who's going to be left?
I hear what you're saying.
Yes.
I think the one thing that I'm wrestling with, I don't even know what I want to do right now, because I think there are so many pros and cons that I have to wrestle with. But first we have to be picked, number one. So that has to happen. The thing I'm wrestling with is the fact that for 20 years we've been in a perpetual analysis paralysis. We've done nothing because we don't feel like we have enough options to choose from, and we keep spending money to get options. And I would love the perfect option for my kids. I want the best option, whatever best is defined to be. And I don't know how I would vote on this yet. I have to still think about it quite a bit. But what I don't want to do is see us continue down that path of not making any decisions, because this is an opportunity, whether I like it or not, it's an opportunity today. Unfortunately, we have to decide if we're chosen what we want to do. And then if we don't choose to do it, then we have to, okay, well, what are our other options? We're back in the option place again. So that's the only thing is I just feel like there's been a lot of analysis paralysis going on for many years.
You know that's been my goal.
And so I'm happy to at least have some things to think about that are real.
Yes.
And I still, like I said though, I'm not convinced. So we have a lot of PR to do if we're picked.
I agree.
First we should pick ourselves, it seems.
This is one thing. One of the downfalls on this whole thing is living in New Hampshire, and I'm not for an income tax, I'm not for a sales tax. Everything is property tax based. I don't think that you will get 2 out of 3 voters to approve a new school or a new middle school. I really don't think that'll happen because of the tax rate, what it's going to do. And that's the reality.
And no state building.
Right. And I think that's where it comes to the thing. People's bottom line is, what is my tax rate going to go up this year or next year if they vote that or a school? That's what it's going to be becoming, you know?
You know, I'd vote for a school in a minute if you can afford it. You want a small school, fine. We can't afford it.
Yeah. Yes.
I just have to say, first of all, I agree with you need to decide whether you want a tuition and not have a school in a community here, or whether you want to tuition and become a part of something else. That's the first decision that really needs to be made, and I know everyone's emotional about the finance part of it, but I am not convinced, and maybe you're going to get there, that tuitioning out my child is going to save me any money. Right. Because we have to tuition, which is already higher, and then we have to still do something with our middle school because we still actually have kids in the middle school that we need to do something with. So it's not just the administrative part of it, we still need to fix that building. So I don't think those two combined costs, unless you can tell me differently, are going to save us money in the long run. Yeah. So I don't know if you have that information.
I don't, but I mean, you're absolutely right. When you look at the data that's there in front of you tonight, you don't.
Right, because going across it, the tuition is higher.
Well, it looks like
So-
this, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, so people who are just solely making this decision based off of finances, I think you need to know more information before you already have your vote in.
Right, I think people are only looking at the short term, not the long term.
I think with the estimates that you put forth as far as the life safety issues and modifying what we need to modify to make it safe for our kids, I mean, it looks pretty clear the difference between tuitioning out and staying in over the course of 18 months would pay for the modifications that we need to make. I mean, if I'm reading your numbers
Yes, I
correctly.
agree with you. Yep.
But, Dr. Did you hear what she's saying, though? She's saying what a lot of the old timers are saying. I don't accept the fact that you can simply put a couple $1 million into the current building and be satisfied.
You call me an old timer.
But what she's telling you is do something affordable, keep the kids in town, and we're willing to spend some money to do it, but we can't spend $50 million to do it. And whether you like the campus plan or whatever, there's still a significant number of people in town that believe that you don't have to spend $50 million to keep our high school in town and to keep our kids in town. I'm sorry, I just cannot buy the rationale that if we cross our T's and dot our I's, as the state tells us, that we have to spend $50 million. I would love to live in a mansion. I can't afford to live in a mansion. I built what I could afford to build before the taxes went up. Now I can't afford to live in it, okay? I wish you guys would sit down and say, okay, what's a number that the town can afford? What can we build and what can we do with it? Because that's how you buy a car.
Exactly.
That's how you build a house.
Well, I think that we also have the luxury of having that experience around us. We have Chinburg, who did amazing things with the mills. They were just shells when he got there. What they've done with Stoke and Smith and all the buildings at the UNH campus that have been there for forever and have gotten very dilapidated and then been resurrected. What they did with UNH Manchester Mills. I mean, I have such a hard time wrapping my brain around the fact that one contractor says that the entire thing needs to be demoed in order to do anything. It's so difficult to understand that a brick building has absolutely no skeleton left to it. That's a hard thing for me to wrap my head around. So if we can get it to a safe place, and if we can pick away and modify or add or go across the street and do a crossover or a go under, just like they did at the UNH campus for the safety of the pedestrians, I would be so much more on that bandwagon.
I'm hearing some repeat of things, and I think, because I just looked at the clock, and I really had aimed for 2 hours, and I'm amazed how quickly it's gone.
We've been repeating these for years, and we're not getting listened to.
No, I understand.
Look around now,
We're
not getting listened to because
But that's not his,
Don't say that.
that's not his responsibility.
Don't say that.
That's the biggest
I
problem.
haven't been here for years.
Collectively, the school.
No. Had you approved the Rockingham Golf Course project?
Right.
We'd have kids in that school right now, and you'd be paying a heck of a lot less than what we're looking at now.
And if we mostly get donating down to the high school, we solve the same problem too. Boy,
Believe me, I understand. I mean, my goal here is really, honestly, is to try and get this thing off of your agenda for a long time. I mean, yeah, 4 years is enough for me, but you've had 5 times 4 years. You know, and we really need to try and get it resolved once and for all in a way that, yes, is cost effective, but in the end, it's really about kids. It's got to be good for our kids.
Yeah, but you didn't talk about the curriculum either, the teachers and the curriculum and what they get in.
Well, I did a little bit. I did, but I did the other day more so, but I kind of went with the flow of questions. Couple more and we're done, okay? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm Denise Chang. I live on Durrell Drive. And I'm coming into this really late. My daughter's now in 6th grade. I homeschooled for most of her career, and I didn't think this was an issue for me. And so I'm a little ignorant on the history of it all. But I'm looking at page 12, which talks about the options if we are offered and accept the tuition agreement. Then you have all these questions. So I guess my main question is, so what we do with the middle school really hasn't been determined. That will be determined once the tuition agreement is voted on, yay or nay? Or are
Hopefully
there
you'll know what that plan is before you vote on the tuition agreement. That's my goal, my aim. And I don't see that as unreasonable.
Ryan Curtis, Doe Farm Lane. Will that be on will the middle school, something related to that, be on the March ballot?
Again, again, it's up to the school board to set the warrant, not me, okay? But my sense of this is you're better off to just deal with the tuition agreement and then have a special meeting that then deals with, if it's thumbs up on the tuition agreement, we vote on this. If it's thumbs down, we vote on this. That's how I read it.
But the life safety issues are non-negotiable.
That'll be on the warrant.
Those,
That'll be on the, that'll be,
but that has to be done though, because there will be
Yes.
students in that building.
That's very.
At the very least,
Yes.
the middle school life safety issues have to be addressed.
I believe that,
Yeah, by 2015.
yeah.
One quick point, John.
Go ahead.
Shander Drive. A tuition agreement isn't really a long-term solution because after 10 years, I presume it goes to the vote of the town of Durham, the town of Newmarket again, if they extend the agreement.
I'm not sure it goes back to the voters at that point. I think it could be, but I think it may be more a school board decision.
That's how the board, I think, signed off on.
The board would, yeah, that's what I would think.
But you're still at their whim.
Deerfield.
So
It's-
in 15
you know,
years,
it's-
we could be completely out of a school.
Yes, you absolutely could. One would like to be optimistic to say that if we come together and it's working well, we'll stay together. And I would hope that's the case. But it's no different than if you're a renter rather than a homeowner. You know, there could come a time when the owner says, I'm selling the place and you're going to have to move. Whatever.
Call it a rent to own. That's what we want to do. We don't want to just
Rent
rent. We
to
want to
own.
rent to own.
Well, I think some people feel that. They think that joining the cooperative after, talking about it after year 5 is really important. But.
Yes, it is.
All right, I'm going to call it closed. You guys have been terrific. I appreciate it so much. Obviously, you can email me if you have any other questions. I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
So I don't have the.